guests today are Kenyatta Rivers, and Rob Reedy. We join their conversation in the faculty lounge.
Two houses down and have no idea about the things that they do, the things that they enjoy, the kind of work they do. I mean, something is sad about that to me. I mean, it just seems like, you know, at the least I should know, you know, that you have this kind of occupation or you have these kinds of interests, but we don't know much about each other as adults, so certainly we can't fault, you know.
See, I don't even like email for that reason.
Right.
I mean, it's important. Email, the internet, the computer, all important, critical to our way of living and communicating with one another. That's not the issue. The issue with me and all that is that there is something lost that's terrible when people don't get together and look at each other eye to eye. I can't put my finger on it.
Mm-hmm.
It could be many different things, but I mean, today, and you know, in departments and across the university and universities,
mm-hmm.
not UCF, just everything's email. You know, where you get no voice inflection, you get no personal contact.
It's two-dimensional.
You know,
mm-hmm.
I mean, and I hate it because it's almost like we're wasting the mind trust
mm-hmm.
or the brain trust,
mm-hmm.
you know, and it's not being fully developed,
and
I worry about that, you know, slipping away.
Sure,
you know,
sure,
maybe
sure.
not. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just my own paranoia.
Well, I mean, sometimes I feel the same way. I mean, in fact, had it not been for this situation today, I wouldn't have known a whole lot about the things that you've talked about in terms of art. So I concur. In fact, I don't even have voicemail on my cell phone. I mean, I have an answer machine at home, answer machine at work, internet service at work, internet service at home. You know, I've got a cell phone, a house phone. You know, it's just, you know, and to me, and there may not be any truth to this, but sometimes I feel that's one of the reasons that people are so stressed. They never can get away. I mean, they always are monitored by something. And so when I go certain places, I said, you know, you either need to call me before this time or after this time, because during this time period, I won't have my cell phone on.
Man, my students do not understand
right.
that, man. I even get that in my evaluations. Yeah. It's like there are times I won't take emails, I won't take voicemail, I am unavailable. Mm-hmm. And even my wife gets upset about that sometimes. You know, she says, I couldn't reach you. And I went like, well, was it an emergency? No, but I said, well, then I don't want you to reach me. You know, I don't want anybody to reach me.
To show you how bad it is, I mean, you go in the restroom, somebody's on the cell phone. I mean, it's like, come on, what is going on here? I mean, it's like, can you ever get away? I mean,
that's exactly right.
But you know, and I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy seeing people and all the cultural things that come in, you know, the body language. One of the courses I teach deals with that. You know, certain cultures stand closer to their conversational partners than other cultures and stuff. And so I'm really big into cultures. And so I try to deliberately go to different cultural events throughout the year. Some things that are Latino based, some things that are Asian based, some things that are African American based, things that are Native American based, which are few and far between, it seems. I wish I could find more activities that focus on that particular group. Things that are very centered around European cultures, because I think the more we know about other people, the less fear we have about other people. And I think that's why sometimes we're very fearful of groups, because we don't know enough about them.
Oh, that's absolutely correct.
And so,
well, at least in my mind.
Yeah. So, and I deliberately put myself in those kinds of situations where I have to learn about somebody else. I mean, it's one thing for it to be mandated because it's a class assignment or a conference that you go to because it's related to your job, but it's another thing when you go because you choose to go.
Right.
And a lot of those things I choose to go to because I want to know, why does this group, you know, why do they do these things? And things that appear to be odd to us are quite normal in that group.
you know, this is what is so difficult in the arts, music, theater, art, you know, is because our cultures are so diverse. Is that in order to reach an international group like that, the ability of an artist to transcend cultures or to cross cultures and communicate with many different kinds of people that can enjoy a work of art or a play or a piece of music is, God, that is so difficult to do because we are so diverse. I mean, like, if in one culture, and I talk to my students about this all the time, you have to be very careful. Do not design something like you were in a closet, you know, in your hometown at your home. It has to be designed, especially if it's going to be manufactured, and the audience, the target audience that you're trying to reach, whether it's a gallery, music, you have to be respectful of these different cultures and be aware that you may say X on a canvas, but some other culture, some other person may see Y.
Well, what do you do? Okay, now in clinical professions, that's interesting because in clinical professions, we somewhat, by our associations and stuff like that, are somewhat mandated in a sense, for lack of a better term, to expose our students to different cultures and beliefs and values, so that when they're interacting with these clinical populations, they have they have a great, you know, they have greater respect and awareness that, okay, I may do this with this group, but I may not be able to do this with this group for these various reasons. What do you do in the humanities to help increase students' awareness of differences in groups, like in art? Because you gave the example of art. What do you do in art to help your students know that that may not be an accurate picture of a Native American culture? In fact, I had one of the class assignments that I have in my multicultural aspects course is some of the students will be assigned to take children's books and take a look at the pictures and what's written about different groups and see if that information is accurate. And one of my students, and I didn't even know this, one of my students, or a group of them, did a project, and they did on Native Americans. And the book that they picked represented a particular tribe, and it had all these horses and whatever else. And come to find out, if you trace the history, they didn't really do that much with horses. You see what I'm saying? So I expose my students in speech-language pathology to those kinds of things. What do you do in art to expose your students to different cultures, so that when they're doing drawings and whatever else? Well,
because we are a visual language, we have a huge library of things. We show them things. For instance, you mentioned cowboys or horses. Have you ever seen a real cowboy? I mean, I ask my students this all the time. I said, I know you've seen Gene Autry and John Wayne. I said, but do you know that they were African American cowboys?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I said, have you ever seen a real? They don't look like that.
Yeah, right.
You know, so you have to be careful about how you depict something, and you, it's like you hear people talk about war all the time and their opinions about war. Have you ever been in war? I mean, you know, have you ever interviewed someone that's been in war, or do you just have an opinion?
But do you do that?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm saying, in other words,
absolutely.
To help them gain a better understanding of war.
Absolutely. I show them as many cross references and multicultural imagery as I possibly can to help them understand that your first solution to this may not be your best, and it may not be as thought out, as well thought out as possible. You might need to do some more research with that.
Well, see, this is what I'm wondering, though, because like you say, you show them imagery and stuff like that, but do you have them as an assignment to talk to somebody who was in war? Because
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I've changed my entire curriculum, the way I teach my classes, and it's all, for lack of a better term, reality-based. All my classes are competitions, and they're all have a beginning and an ending with a finished product, and they're people that are chosen to actually do commissioned artwork. Okay, and these are freshmen and sophomore students, but they have to do the research. I'm talking about background research, budgets. I mean everything. You know, because artists can design these beautiful things, and they're completely unreal. They can't even be manufactured, okay? And then they put them out, and they go like, oh, well, I didn't want people to feel that way when they looked at it. And I said, well, you should have thought about that earlier. And when you put things out, people are going to have opinions about it. We have to research that thoroughly. And then knowing that even with our best research, you put it out there and you're going to be, you're going to experience the scrutiny and the opinions of the general public.
See, because my perception would be, or is that if you, because I was good for that. I would have my students research this and research that, but I found that my students came, they had a better understanding of some of the topics we were talking about when I actually had them to talk to a person who was in a wheelchair. I mean, you can read all the great articles about how a person feels, when they have a handicap or what have you, but when they actually talk to a person who
get a totally different
picture. And so that's why I was wondering, like, when your students are preparing to do a certain work, I know they can go to the library, they can look at certain books and so on and so forth, but if they're going to do a drawing of a person who lives in a rural setting, do they actually go and talk to a person who lives in a rural setting before they do?
They don't always do that.
Or a person who's from there, they don't even have to be living there now. One of the ways I tap into that is have my students in class form small groups, and given a topic, and then I let them talk about that topic. But I oftentimes find that as they're talking about that topic, they start sharing their own personal experiences. And so I may do a great job in teaching, but I find that many times my students do even a better job than I do because they're able to share with each other what they've gone through and places they've been and places they'd like to go.
Well, we do that. Yeah, we critique, and I actually spend very little time telling them, the Kingsfield myth, or the I've got the information and you don't kind of format. I put them in small groups and they work in teams together so that they get that kind of cross-fertilization. What I can't stand is let's live in a cardboard box for a day so that we can understand the homeless project that I see on campus from time to time, or any campuses. It's like those kids get up the next day and go take a shower and eat a pizza. I mean, if you really want to know about homeless, then live out there for a year.
Right.
Then we'll talk about homeless. But one of the things we try to do in my classes is to help them understand themselves better and where they grew up, and let that be the inspiration for the way they make art, because that is what they're an expert in. I mean, they're the single greatest expert in the world about what it's like for Susan to grow up in Hattiesburg, Mississippi on Elm Street or whatever, and not, while they're influenced and experience multiculturalism and stuff like that, out of respect, let's focus on what you know best, and then maybe how these things influence you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, because I have to tell you that is oftentimes the most difficult assignment for my students at times, because what they will do is they will go, and in fact, many of them have expertise on different cultures, rather it's because of their upbringing in terms of living next door to a group of people who may have been from this background, or having traveled to another country, whatever else. But then I'll say, okay, let's talk about you. I don't know a lot about me. I'm saying, well, you've been with yourself for 360 years.
Therein lies the problem.
Right. So, and that's a very difficult task. Like, I will, ask them to write just a little narrative about themselves, and that is a very hard task.
Oh yeah, artist statements.
Right.
Oh God, you think? Listen, projects are nothing.
Right.
When you have to write that little paragraph, that artist statement about what it is you were trying to do, and you can't refer to anything. You got to talk about you. Yeah. Oh God, you'd think I'd poured burning coals on top of their head.
Because I thought initially it may be more that they were concerned about self-promotion. Like I don't like to do that about myself. But then I started realizing it's not always the issue of self-promotion. It's like, really don't know much about me.
Yeah.
And so we go through a lot of different activities so that they can learn about themselves and learn about their families and whatever else. In fact, some of my student comments at the end of the semester, the student-free responses, they'll say, I learned more about me than I learned about anybody else.
Well, let me what you said right there to me is the single most important key to ensuring that an artist will be an artist, a musician, a speech pathologist, is that knowing who you are and how that translates to what you do, okay? People are afraid of that. It's much easier to live off of history and data that's already been gathered than to start looking inward and dissecting yourself and really telling people what you feel and what you mean and what you're thinking, because then when you do that, people will go like, man, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Or how about this one? Man, I don't agree with that at all. Because where in their 12 years of education to the point are they ever rewarded for saying, I don't know?
Do you find it more difficult for your male students to do that more than your females?
I don't know. That'd be an interesting research project. I don't know, because I mean, with what I went through and the emergence of feminism and women's rights and stuff like that, I'm seeing a little more moxie out of the females now, or as much. It used to be you could see that repressed. I mean, that was repressed, But I'm not really noticing that much, but I may not be paying attention to it. That may be.
It'd be interesting to see, because I have a lot of students, male and female, who have no problems in sharing how they feel. But it's interesting, some of my male students will come to me after class and say, I was going to say this in class, but I really didn't think it would be good to say. And I'm like, that's exactly what should have been said. I mean, that could have changed the whole conversation. Why didn't you say? They say, I don't really feel. So that's the other.
You know why?
Because the upbringing?
The first day of class, I tell my students, man, vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. If you do not understand that, you will, that's what research is predicated on. Research is a verb. It is not a noun, okay? We still don't understand that at universities. We promote and we reward grants for research. No, they don't. They reward you for, what have you done? Well, research is the path to getting to that product. Right. And so, it's hard for students to let go of that. Well, you know what, I really don't know, but the answer to the question. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make up some kind of situation, or I'm going to act like I do, and and so they get into this vicious circle instead of just saying, I don't understand what you said, and how can we get through this together, Instead it's like, what, you don't know?
Right.
Or if you, what's happening in your classroom now that when you ask a question to the class, when you say, hey, what do you guys think about da-da-da-da-da-da-da?
Generally, no response.
That drives me
no
nuts.
response. Right, no response.
How many hours of how much money does it cost per credit hour to go to school?
Right. But I sometimes I wonder, have we not done that to ourselves? Because in many situations, K through 12th grade, the only time you should be saying something is at the time you raise your hand.
Exactly.
And so then they get into a university setting, and all of a sudden we somehow expect them to say however they feel and whatever else, when for the past 12 to 13 years, if you include kindergarten, they really haven't been encouraged to do that. So then all of a sudden we get them in a university setting and said, okay, well, how come you guys aren't saying anything? Well, for the past 12 to 13 years, you hadn't had the opportunity to do that. So I try to do a lot of icebreaker kinds of things, or I know, having had conversations with my students after class, that they have different opinions. And so I'll use that during the next class session. So I'll ask a question, and I'll call on someone on this side of the class, and then I'll say, well, Sally, what do you think about that? Okay, and then I'll hit somebody in the back of the class, because students, at least the number of students I've had over the years, tend to have the idea that if I sit in the back of the class, they're less likely to call me. So I know that, so I deliberately call them. Or I have students who, you ask a question, And in the minute you ask the question, they put their head down thinking, or put their heads down thinking that, okay, if my head is down or I can't see him, he can't see me. Wrong.
Yeah.
Just because you put your head down, I still see you.
Yeah.
So that's the ones I'll call. You know, if you put your head down, then it's most likely I'm going to call you because I still see you. And so I want to know what you have to say about this. And the other thing I do is I do a lot of small group things. And then after they go in their breakout session and I bring them back together, then I'll present that issue to the class and have the group talk, and then I'll ask individuals within the group. Did you agree with that?
Well, let me throw something out at you here and see what you think about
Yeah.
this. If I were grading the format or the design that we use to educate people in a university setting, I would give that student a C or a D.
For doing what?
Just the format, just the, you know, the 15 weeks, I'm up here, you're out there, I've got the information, you don't, listen, you know. What it appears, this is just my opinion, it appears to me that what we've done is this format of university education, semester, quarters, is thousands of years old, or hundreds of years old, and all we do is we just keep adding another layer of icing on top of it. And now we've added the internet, computers, and digital imaging and media and stuff like that. And I still come to my class and I still ask that question and there's still blank stares. I have just got it in my craw to try to find a way to bust that wide open. And I think for me it has to do with package design. I think the way we move, not just communicate on the internet, but the way we physically move, we've lost contact with one another. This FCAT phenomena, I mean, that's why I'm so against talent. You know how many guys I played against football in high school that were talented this, and my son played at the next level. He said, "Dad, talent means nothing." I said, if I told you how many times I killed the guy in front of me that was all this and all that, it'd blow your mind. It's about productivity, professionalism, performance, preparedness, practice, being comfortable in your own skin and stuff like that. And when you ask that question, they turn their head down. That's sending me a signal.
What does it send to you?
That they don't know who they are. They're not comfortable with anything. They're just like going through a system. It's like cattle being herded through a gate. And I just don't. I think we're missing something very fundamental here. I don't know what it is.
And see, and I concur with you to some extent, but I don't know. I don't totally feel that they don't know who they are. I think they know who they are, but at times I don't think, at least when I talk to them, I don't think that they feel that there is enough people who are interested in who they are.
Right. That's hard in a lecture class of 500 students.
Well,
I don't think it's impossible, but it you know, I'm in one of those buildings where those classes come in and out, you know.
Yeah, but there are always ways to make it happen, and I'm a firm believer where there's a will, there's a way.
I agree with you. I agree with that. I'm not saying that it's not just about the size of the class. I mean, we have people that do great jobs with large lecture classes and find a way to personalize things. But well,
I'll tell you this. If you think you're going to do it by the old traditional stand up, I'm going to stand behind the lectern and give you the information and whatever else, it's not going to happen. I'm finding that teaching is almost, and this may not be the right breakdown, but I think teaching to some extent is 90% entertainment and 10% content. Because if I don't make it fun, if I don't make it entertaining, let me say it like this: if I'm not enthusiastic and I'm not doing a lot of things that are entertaining, because a lot of the things that these kids do are, circles around entertainment. The web, the videos, and so on and so forth. So I really try to as much as I can, try to entertain in the way that it's not, you know, not like a comedian up there, but I do some things that would fall into the realm of entertainment, and in that entertainment, I insert my content. And so the students will come up to me and say, gosh, Dr. Rivers, that was such a great class. You know, I mean, you know, we really didn't have to do this and that. Oh, they did. They just didn't know they were doing it.
Yeah.
So I think that how do we handle those kind of situations that you describe? I think we've got to make it present it to them in the way that they have been receiving it over the past 8 or 9 years. I mean, if their culture has been where you do a lot of entertaining things, then I try to bring that in. I try to entertain and at the same time making sure I get the content, because like I tell my students, we have some learning objectives in this class and we have to attain these things by the end of the semester. So they're cognizant of that and I'm cognizant of that, but how they get to it is different than what I did years ago.
I'd add another E word to that, and that would be empowerment. I've been really working hard on empowering my students, or creating environments and scenarios in class that put them in charge as much as a student can be in a classroom with dangerous tools and stuff like that.
And I use an O word, ownership.
Yeah.
I give them ownership.
Same
of this.
thing.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right.
same
So
thing.
I'm not the only one who owns this class. You own this class. Yeah. And I think the president, President Hitt, gave a very good example. I was in a meeting one time and he said this. He said that what our students have to realize is that they are consumers, okay? But they're not consumers like one who goes to a fast food restaurant, you know, where you pay something, you get a product. You're a consumer